all, it's Kelly here, and last month I went on a trip to the North Shore of Lake Superior. We were almost in Canada and it was absolutely gorgeous and beautiful, and I wanted to be able to preserve these memories in my favorite way, which is making a travel sketchbook spread. So I'm going to go through this process with you, paint together, talk about the trip, and just discuss some tips and tricks for travel journaling. When I travel, I'm often so busy adventuring that I don't really have time to sit down and do a full plein air painting or urban sketching session. Instead, I like to take a bunch of pictures and video while I'm on my adventure so I can reference those later in my sketchbook. And it is really, really fun to be able to sit down in the space that you're going to be sketching and do that. And if that's something you enjoy but maybe don't have time for, you can always just pencil out a quick sketch when you're in a location and then touch it up and paint it when you're back home. Or even just bringing a really smaller sketchbook can seem less intimidating and easier to travel with than a big sketchbook. And you can fill a smaller sketchbook quicker, and so you can do quick little tiny sketches. But for me, I'm usually just taking pictures and then drawing them later. So first I gather up all those videos and pictures that I want to use as reference, and I listed out some of the things I wanted to draw. And I used this to actually build out some thumbnails of what I wanted to do. I don't usually do a thumbnail. Often I'll just kind of start drawing. But for this one, I wanted to try using different panels through the sketchbook spread and kind of block it out as little scenes. This is something that I've seen other artists do, and I really wanted to try it. And so because I wanted to be a little bit more intentional with what I was choosing for the page, I went ahead and did some thumbnails. And then I went ahead and sketched out the panels on the page to make sure they were formatted well and just made sure the layout was okay. I don't usually use pencil sketches before I add other mediums, but this time I really wanted to make sure the layout was okay within the greater sketchbook spread and also within each smaller panel. I wanted to put more pencil down than I normally would, just to make sure I was utilizing the space the way I wanted to. But if you're pencil sketching, make sure that you're not putting a ton of detail into it. I was really just trying to block out shapes so that I was putting things where I wanted them to. But if you're being too detailed with your sketches, it's harder to erase. Granted, some people like to have those pencil sketches as part of the finished piece, in which case, yeah, go ahead, draw out everything you want to, anything that's going to be easier for you when you go to the next stages. As always, a sketchbook is a personal tool, and there is no right or wrong way to experiment and to fill out all of your ideas. I have a Strathmore sketchbook, by the way, and I'm using a micron pen for all the pen work. Later I'll do some watercolor here, but pen work is always my favorite. Inking is just so meditative and relaxing for me, and so this was definitely my favorite part of the process, and I just went scene by scene, whichever one was coming up first in my reference photos, and I went ahead and sketched them out in pen. Yeah, this was just absolutely my favorite part. One of my favorite things about drawing in general is just getting to spend time, designated time with your subjects while you study them and draw them. And then you get to know these subjects even better. And with travel sketchbooks, it's such a high value for me to get to meditate on these memories, and then it really cements them in my brain. And then if I ever do forget, I have these beautiful sketchbooks to go back and look at and remember all of these things. If you're considering starting a travel sketchbook, I highly recommend it. Not only for those reasons, but it's also just a fun way to experiment with different mediums and layouts. And you get to draw things you don't normally think of drawing because you're out adventuring, traveling, experiencing new things, seeing new things, and then it gives you this personal connection to draw some things that are outside of your normal day-to-day life, and I really enjoy that. And like I said earlier, I'm putting this travel spread together in a very organized, deliberate way, but it's okay to, do this in whatever way that works for you. And I wish I had more time when I'm in the place I'm visiting to actually draw on location. But if I am going to do that, I'm probably using a smaller sketchbook than this. Something this large is hard for me to travel with. But if you have something smaller, like I love to have something in my pocket or my bag that I can just whip out while I'm waiting for my coffee order or while I'm on a train or an airplane, because then you can quick sketch something down while you're waiting. And you'd be surprised what you can do with 5 minutes here or there, and really building a travel journal. It's fun too when you have stickers or tickets or something from your experience and kind of do a collage in your travel sketchbook as well. And so those are just some ideas of things you can do with your travel sketchbook. While I'm drawing these, why don't I give you the quick layout of what each of these panels are. So we'll go from left to right, top to bottom, just like you're reading. So the first one is a salmon bagel sandwich from Northern Water Smokehouse, which is a must stop in Duluth. We stop for these salmon sandwiches every time we're in Duluth, almost every time. We love them so much. And so on our drive north, we had to stop for lunch and get some fresh salmon. The next panel is the tunnel through the Silver Creek Cliff, which is the highest bluff rising above Lake Superior at 125 feet above the surface, which isn't very tall for some people out there who live by a lot of rock formations and mountains. But in the Midwest, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I was pretty excited throughout the trip just to see lots of rocks, which I don't always get to see. This next one is a seagull, which is pretty random, but this particular seagull was trying to steal our fresh donuts when we were eating them by the beach in Grand Marais, and we just had a fun memory trying to shoo all of these seagulls away, and it was pretty fun. And the donuts were delicious. Next, the tall panel is multiple waterfalls in Cascade River State Park. This was an impromptu stop. We made several impromptu stops on our drive up, and because there's just so much to see along the route. And this one turned into a multiple hour adventure and was probably my favorite hike of the entire trip. And then the panel on the far left is Split Rock Lighthouse, which is a must-see stop if you're going along the North Shore. It's a very popular tourist destination. We didn't go up close to the lighthouse, but we did see it from afar and walked along the beach. And that was absolutely beautiful. In the middle of the page is the gondola ride we took in Lutsen. The ski resort there offers rides in the off season to view the spectacular fall colors, and I personally found the height a bit scary, but the view was definitely worth it, and that was just a really gorgeous morning. Below that is a small island that sits off the bluff of Split Rock Lighthouse. There is a beautiful beach with black rocks all along the shore there, and we were there on a windy day, and so the waves were just mesmerizing, and I could have sat there and watched the waves all day. Next to that panel is Betty's Pies, another pivotal stop for anyone heading north, and we enjoyed some absolutely perfect pies and coffee at Betty's Pies. And then we'll end with a picture of myself and my boyfriend at Cascade River State Park. I just really like that photo of us. We took a lot of photos of us throughout the trip, but that one was my favorite, so I decided to include it. You'll also see I have some flowers and plants that are ones that I often saw as we went along our hikes. And I personally have this habit or hobby of taking lots of pictures of the flora and fauna that we see on our hikes. I just think flowers are beautiful, and of course I've got to go home and draw them once I have all these pictures of them. Remember that you should not pick flowers when you're out hiking, not only for the state of the ecosystem you're in, but also for all the other hikers to view them as they walk along the path. So don't be stealing flowers, but take lots of pictures. There are so many other memories that I would have loved to add, but I can always make a second sketchbook spread, and these are the ones that really encompass my favorite parts of the trip. And so I think this turned out to be a good layout for all of them. And don't be afraid when you're making a travel sketchbook to draw the silly or random things that made your trip special. Like a seagull or a bagel sandwich might not be that interesting to everybody, but to us, like, it had a lot of meaning and sparks memories for me. So don't be afraid to draw things that aren't the specific tourist attractions, and just notice other things throughout your trip. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I have a lot of art content coming up. But next up, I'm just playing with some colors. I'm using some watercolor over the ink. I just wanted to keep a pretty condensed color palette. As I've expressed before, I'm not the biggest painter. I'm not super confident with my use of color, but I did want to practice and try to find like a cohesive palette. I don't know how well I did. I feel like I went pretty bright in my colors, but I kept to one green, one blue, one yellow, and a splash of red. I definitely wanted to do green and yellow because we saw those colors the most in the trees when we were there. You needed to have some blue for the water and the sky, and then I added just a spark of red for many of the things ended up being red, so that worked out great. And then I would just mix those four colors in different ways to get all the different shades of what I wanted. And while I inked one panel at a time with my reference photo, I actually just went one color at a time throughout the entire page. That helped me to just keep painting while watercolor dried in certain areas of each panel. And then it also helped me to make the entire sketchbook spread even and balanced. There wasn't too much of one color on one part of the page. So that really helped. And also, you know, once you have your paintbrush one color, you can just keep it one color as you go. But that was kind of my process for painting this. Like I said, I think my colors turned out much brighter and more vibrant than I intended, but I'm really happy that I gave it a shot, and I will continue to work on my use of color. So there we have the full sketchbook spread. I of course had the little title as well and the places where we visited. Please let me know in the comments which panel is your favorite. I think mine is the lighthouse panel. I also really loved how the flowers turned out. I originally was gonna put the flowers in a separate panel, but ended up deciding to place them around the edges, which just kind of brings it all together, and I like that a lot. I think the panel of me and my boyfriend was okay, but I think my face turned out a little funny. So thank you so much for painting with me. I hope you are inspired to work on your own travel sketchbook, and let me know where you're traveling to next so I can get some good ideas. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you all real soon.